Hey everybody, it's Grimgar RPG. I'm here today to talk about modding, save scumming, and cheating in RPGs and my thoughts on all these topics. I've been watching a lot of Tim Cain's content recently, and that guy has a lot of thoughts on video game development, and it really made me think like there's not a ton of discussion on some of these topics. There's a lot of discussion actually going on Reddit about these topics, and I recently accused somebody on Reddit of cheating for certain aspects of their gameplay, and they were like, cheating is subjective. And so you'll hear more about that later in the video, but yeah, that's what I wanted to talk about today is what is the relationship between all these things, modding, save scumming, and cheating. I think as I weave how I feel about these things, you'll be able to kind of tell where I'm coming from, and I encourage you to say in the comments how you feel about stuff. And I'm going to try to make sure to bring this all back to BG3 specifically, because that's the game I'm focusing on right now on this channel. Let's get into it. So the first major topic today is modding. Now, if you're new to RPGs or if you're a veteran, you know, there's a lot of different levels of understanding of what this means, but I'll just in the simplest terms say this is when people who play the game, who have a love for the game themselves, independently create changes to the textures or the assets or, you know, like the weapons or the mechanics of the game. This can also include improvements. This can include enhancements to the script, like script extenders and things like this. Ultimately, it is all around a good thing that modding exists. Don't get me wrong. While I may make some points about this topic that are critical, I love modding. Part of the reason that I'm bringing this up is that if you watch my content, you will know that I have waffled between not using mods and using mods while doing my honor mode runs in BG3. Modding has a lot of pros and cons. One of the biggest cons is that to learn how to do modding takes time, because you have to usually read guides, and sometimes people will put their mod on a GitHub somewhere, and you don't even know what a GitHub is, and you're like, what the fuck am I doing? And sometimes there can be like, oh, you need to do this list of mods, and that mod list could be outdated. It could be years since anyone has even made any updates to the mods that you're putting into the game or want to put into the game. So there's a lot of those cons related to how steep it is to learn. But the pro is that if you actually take the time to learn how to use mods, you can drastically improve your experience with games. And that includes all those things that I mentioned before, like texture improvements, enhancements to the code, to the script, making things run more smoothly. Like I can play Fallout New Vegas without it crashing at all for hours on end with the mods that I've had installed. It may be difficult to do it without experience, but modders and modding communities are consistently making it easier to mod games, and modding games right now has arguably been easier than it ever has been before. There are things like Thunderstore and Vortex via this website called Nexus Mods that provide ways to very quickly install mods in a package form. There have been modding communities that kind of create their own bespoke corner of the modding of that game. And what I mean by that is like you could download like, what was it? Skyrim Forever. I'll put it in next to me in the video here. Basically like a multiplayer version of Skyrim that, yeah, you could add all these like client side mods, but effectively if you just wanted to play multiplayer Skyrim for the fuck of it, yeah, you could play it for a while. But on the other hand, there's some downsides to this, because like obviously Larian says that this game, Baldur's Gate 3, is balanced for 4 party members. But I'm going to admit in my next honor mode video, I'm probably going to be using Party Limit Begone. Not necessarily to cheese the death system, but to just literally have 5 to 6 party members out in the field. This game can be steep at times, and I just want to complete it. And I'm also just interested in the idea of the Gnome Dark Urge run. And also, this is a good time to mention that my video will be in dishonor mode because my party died and I'm sick of restarting. But that can be a con, because people will look at that kind of change to the game and say, well, you've broken the balance now and you've kind of like ruined the point to some degree. But I feel like a lot of people in the community, this community at least, have not been super negative about that aspect of the mod. Although if you go to the Nexus Mods website, it does consider it to be an unbalanced thing. So yeah, it's complicated with modding. We were just talking about how modding can change the balance of the game. It might make certain difficult modes easier, as in my case, it's going to drastically make things easier to have 6 party members so that 2 of them can constantly be dying on the battlefield and the other 4 can like revive them. Now, if you're unfamiliar with save scumming, it's basically the concept that you can create so many saves in a row that you've effectively cataloged chronologically your entire run. So if you're being really meticulous about it, you can save after every behavior, after every action, after every choice that you've made, and go back in time to any of those and change that decision. And a lot of people in the community like the single save mode precisely because it takes away the ability to save scum. But there are definitely some benefits to save scumming that can't be ignored. If having a fun time in your childhood, you probably got a chance to read choose your own adventure novels. And I'm sure at some point you went to the page that you wanted to choose just to see what happened. And if you died, you would just go back to that page and choose the different option. I think that what's important about that option is a greater degree of control over the trajectory of your run in a game. And so a lot of people still love save scumming, and it's talked about and joked about on forums and all over the place. The big con of this is how it can pull you out of the game, because suddenly you're telegraphing all of your moves. You're not truly role-playing, you're metagaming. You're a time wizard remaking decisions that should have just been set in stone. Because like in a normal tabletop role-playing game, you don't get to like go back on certain decisions. If you become a save scumming RPG player, you might find yourself in a position where you're creating characters and then just stopping, because after a while we'll get to know every single move that is possible in the game. And so then your problem is that you might be clicking through dialogue that you've already heard and accidentally make a choice that you shouldn't have. Save scummers kind of overlap with speedrunners in that way, in that like everything you do after a while, if you're really into it, becomes this game of like, okay, if I'm starting this new run, then I know that I need to get to this point and get this hammer or whatever. And then suddenly you're in a position where you're like, okay, I'm level 20 or whatever. And like, you know, like in Skyrim, everybody does that. And then, oops, I'm suddenly a bow archer with sneak as my other skill. So it's like, even if save scumming is a little bit tedious in that way and takes you out of the game, it also can be considered to be like cheating in a way. And I think that that's a good way to segue into my very subjective feelings about cheating, because there's a lot of people that play Larian games that noticed that they put explosive barrels everywhere, and you can pick these barrels up and then replace them into combat. And this makes it really easy to just cheese through some fights. And I have noticed this as well, and it's helped me in my hunter mode runs, but I'm like trying to do it a little bit less, because like a lot of these other players, I kind of feel it to be cheesy and cheap. So I think all of us as RPG players just have to look at what we care about in the game, what makes it the most fun. It's all just subjective, but like, you know, mods could be considered to be kind of cheating. Like I said earlier, you're talking about adding content to the game. One other thing about mods that I didn't say earlier is that sometimes it adds lore, and then there's people who like are obsessed with lore and have arguments about that on Reddit. And I'm not involved in that at all, because I don't really go that deep on lore. But lore is so important to people that if you were to mention something that had happened to you in modded content and it was not originally in the game, then people are like, what the hell are you talking about? Or that's from X mod. And there's people making content on YouTube about mods and not knowing that it's not in the original game. And I think that's what people get so about. But yeah, what does it all mean for me and my playstyle? Well, like I said, I think the barrels in Larian games, yes, they're a little bit cheap and they're plentiful. That might be why a lot of people say that Larian games are easy. Things like the mods. I'm feeling a little bit guilty about the party limit be gone, but actually I shouldn't, because it's making the game more fun. Yeah, the difficulty is scaled back a little bit for me then in this run, but I've noticed that it's more fun to just like go through the Dark Urge right now. I've never done the full campaign for the Dark Urge, and hopefully soon with the update, patch 7, I'll be able to still continue this run as it is. And there's also like aspects of the game that I think that I didn't talk about earlier that you can exploit. I used my wife's copy of the game to create a secondary character in my current version of the run of Violencio. Modding can alter the game in ways that some consider to be unnatural. And save scumming is, well, it's in the name. You get it. And cheating. I mean, what really is cheating? There's so many different ways now to customize games to fit your preferred experience. So that's it.